Hello and welcome to Real Hi-Fi Help. So this is me and my video about this created one of the best transistor systems. This is one of the best transistor systems I've ever heard. It's basically just this guy here with this guy here in a certain type of room. So it's this size here. Let me just try and draw that for you guys. See if I can draw that for you. I'm gonna draw it from the side. So how do we do this? It's kind of going in here. Wow. And I think it was like this here and then we had like a window. Yeah. Whoa. That's dirty windows here. So actually, there's actually a wall going like here. And then I had my Fender speaker about half a foot to a foot here. And I did the same thing over here. This is, if you can see it, the wall. Man, I'm not good at drawing. Can you guys visualize this? So this is basically the Fender 1CI speaker. Yeah, 1CI. Let's see. 1CI here. And what did I have? I think at this time I had, oh yeah, and then over here, let's just say there's like another wall here, and then we have like a door that opens up. Man, I'm not good at drawing. Need to improve my drawing skills. And then over here I had like a sofa that I could sit on, and then the wall over here. What do we call that? Sofa. Let's call that sofa. So I think I had, I think from here to here, probably had like four to 4.5 meters, and from here to here, see if I can draw that for you guys. Whoop. I think I had, what was it? Like 3.8 meters. And let me just try and make that a bit more three-dimensional. So this is basically an opening to another room. The speaker ends around here. Let's just say it goes like this. I know it's bad. This is basically a shut door over here that you can't see. This is just a wall, me sitting here, which is like, I don't know, 3.5 meters, something like that, from here to here. It's about 3.5 meters. Let's just say it's 3.5 meters. So I had my head around 3.5 meters over to these speakers here. Let's just call that the speaker, you know. So there's this wall here, then there's the opening to the other room, and then there's this like drywall wall that goes inwards, and then you have the windows that can go in and out. So that was like the first room I had where I had a proper system. And I went from my Macintosh MA6900 over to a YBA amp. And this was surprisingly good, even though this is only 16 square meters, you know. about 16 square meters. And the amp in itself wasn't really that powerful, and the speakers were a bit heavy and not really that powerful, but all that drywall behind it here, and that brick wall here supporting the speaker, and then this corner here, and only having about 4.5 meters to the back wall over here, which was stone. I would say this was surprisingly good, this room here. And funny, when you have an opening over here, there was like this sort of suck out and unevenness, unevenness, something, whatever, however you write that. And that was kind of coupled together with this window that was kind of boosting the sound. So it was kind of being sucked out here, and at the same time boosted, and psyched up with that window being over here. So kind of interesting. It gave it a very interesting sound that I would say put a bit of extra emphasis on certain frequencies. So that was a really like an eye-opening experience when I went from my Macintosh MA6900 over to this here, and it's just not a normal amplifier. Once you take this and you really do a proper modification of it on the CD player and the amp, my God, do you just have wouldn't say a beast on your hands, but you just have such an intimate, passionate sound. And the thing is, when you have these small rooms here, I had like what did I have? I had like a TV furniture here. Let's just draw it, teeny, and then like a TV up here. Yeah, I had like a TV furniture here, with a supporting side that kind of isolated the sounds. Let's just say these are sounds coming out. And that helped a lot, that really helped a lot, focus the left and right channel so they were separated and boosted in a natural way. If I would have taken the speaker out here and there would have been this, it would have been directly exposed to this opening of this office, because this was an open door, this is a closed door. This was just like open space to another room that went like 4 meters over there. If I did that, I would totally have lost my sound. And also, you don't then have the boosted sidewall here from the furniture and the drywall. I would have totally lost the sound if I did that. But I just find it interesting how flawed this kind of first proper room that I had, how flawed it was in so many ways, but still sounded so good simply because of this, this small wall here where the speaker could kind of almost rest against, and there would probably be like 10 centimeters till here until it opens up to another room, That was kind of enough to save the sound and make it seem, make my, I don't know how strong is that amplifier. I think it's like 60 watts class AB, and that's not a lot on a really heavy speaker like this. It just made the sound solidify and stress the amp in a way that was a lot less compared to if the room was 2 or 3 times bigger, And I think that because of that, I was able to just listen to a sort of sound that you don't often get to hear. Very rare type of sound. So, man, do I miss this system. I really miss this system. And this is basically how it's put together, Fenderstein 1CI. I think they still make the exact same model that they've been making for like 15 years. Fantastic speaker. One of the best, I would say, one of the best starter speakers in the world, I think most people should start off with a speaker like that in a smallish room. Just make sure you did what I did if you start owning a set like that, that it's like within half a foot or a foot within the side walls and the back walls. You know, that really helps the sound a lot. They really come alive and sound much bigger and powerful. And yeah, I mean, the name says itself, you know, passion. It was really about passion and integration, balance, beauty, just very intimate sound. And I don't feel that you ever really get to hear this type of sound in stores. When you hear store amplifiers, usually there are exceptions to the rule. I feel that store amplifiers usually are a lot more manly, a lot more powerful in a much more filtered way, where when you connect stuff to that amp, you don't hear like directly this is doing this to that amp. You know, you're hearing it on like a filter that's perhaps 5 or 10 times longer, so you might be, you know, messing around with cables and all sorts of stuff, and it all sounds the same on a lot of store amps, especially the big and powerful ones. So very interesting. And this Shunyata Hydra $6, you know, that was when I got to try kind of fully understand that what filtering was doing to the sound. I wouldn't say that this is one of the better boxes in the world, but you definitely feel around this area, this level, that stuff is happening. You know, it's filtering the sound, it's making stuff in the mid-range and the treble especially come out, so you're hearing a lot more detail. Yeah, it was a bit thin, harsh, it was a bit unloving and slightly mechanical, but still very, very interesting. Good start for filtering power. And what I did, what made this system so special was I had a friend, still have that friend, a very good friend. He made he kind of upgraded the amp, and he made sure that the silver cable that was inside was matching the rest of the system. There was this synergy, this type of sound that you just don't ever hear. I'm going to get into that very soon, but it was just very artsy, you know. That I was going from Macintosh, which was a very good sound. That was my first real proper sound, you know, where everything was just felt almost like it was supposed to be, you know, perfect. Very good in almost all ways. And, you know, OIE plugs on everything, and these OIE RCA Genesis plugs, just ridiculously good. If you're ever looking for some RCA plugs that have fantastic energy and detail, and just are really lively and good in almost every aspect, those are really good. And I had, I knew that this box was a tiny bit on the thin-ish side. So what I did was very smart. I had this here, the 079 plugs on the power bar over to the wall, which kind of made the whole power box more warm and solid in sound. That was very important. That was, by the way, a really, really, really good decision that I made. Took me a while to kind of figure that out. But on a system like this, you could hear all the small nuances in detail. So I just had to change one plug on one cable for it to totally sound different. It was really that reactive. And then I tried the 046 OIE plugs. You can see on my videos about these power plugs here if you ever want to. Very fresh, very diva-like plug, you know. Has almost like a ceiling on the top end, but just extremely fresh and sexy, and you know, it just almost hypnotizes you, that type of sound. But you need some pretty damn good cables to go with that to control that type of sound. And again, very good move that I made back then, which made a huge difference to the system, was the Oyade SWO XXXE Palladium version. That's basically this here sound, just on a wall socket, and it just, you know, it just clicked perfectly with this sound here. And I think I tried it originally with the normal power bar. It's a bit more harsh, unsophisticated, muddy, raw. And then I put the Shunyata Hydra on, and yeah, you got more filtering. You know, it was more controlled volume, more stable, just lots more detail. But on these speakers, the Fenderstein speakers, they just become a very different speaker when you have something like Oyade good spade plugs. So just write that, speaker spade plugs were Oyade good, and very good. You just have to move the plastics on the side so you can get room for that. But the integration that I got in this system, I almost never got to hear that again on other systems. The fact that the guy used the same type of copper on the speaker cables, and it was the same type of brand that he also used on the amp, but I think it was silver that he did. But it was still the same type of sound. So that's a bit like when Audionote use their silver and copper cables. They have a very similar sound. So that was very smart of me to do that. So I could basically manipulate the sound with this system here, and I could do so much just by changing the plugs. That was a fantastic sound. So let me just get into it. Very rare, with an artful way of expressing itself. Just very fresh, airy, transparent, with like a hint of glowy, punchy, warm edginess. And this was just disturbingly good, that you never really hear a stock brand sound in stores that, you know, angled in this type of way. Just extremely passionate, and there were a lot of small details, but you know, it wasn't at the level at Negra or Spectral, but it was, you know, it was getting close to that, you know. And it's just the intimacy, you know, the raw and intensity of it, and it was flawed in a thin way, but still very hypnotic, you know. Just awesome. And yeah, like I wrote here, this was like owning an 80-year-old wine that had matured to its full potential, and when you opened it, it blossomed and it turned into a sort of a silky orange reddish color that just filled you with confidence and almost made love to your lips with its colorful tastes. So this was a sound that was almost like a freak accident, very hard to recreate, and yes, it was flawed. It wasn't perfect, you know. You can buy a lot of I wouldn't say a lot, but you can buy some expensive systems that can easily outperform this system in many of the structural ways. But it was just so mind-bogglingly good in a flawed type of way. And I truly miss the sound, truly miss it. So the amp and the signal on the CD was a very short signal. I also had RCA cables, again, fusing that together with the same type of cable that was inside. Fantastic job. I was lucky with my amp on the back side of it. I had the version here with the good RCA plugs. I've seen some of them on the net that have the not so good RCA, but I had the good ones. I don't know why that happened. Perhaps I got like a special version. And it was just so reactive. You hear all of these I wouldn't call them normal amplifiers, but there's a lot of pretend hi-fi gear out there, and you connect the cable to it, and it's like nothing's happening. It's the same boring, dull, filtered sound that doesn't want to move, and I just find that very special. You could probably get something similar with like a Nelson Pass Labs First Watts amp that also has a very short circuit in it, and like a YBA DT Integra. You could also get it from like that. But when I took normal store-bought cables, I took like an Oyed Tsunami power cable, one of the more respectable power cables, and pretty decent for the price. When I put that to the amplifier, I could just hear it totally dying. Like a 400-pound guy was sitting on each of my speaker. It was shockingly how much it changed the sound, and that's just because I had that same power cable, Flawed homemade power cable that my friend made, which was, even though it wasn't an officially approved power cable, the way that it negotiated the sound, the vibrancy of the sound, the way that it got the sound, brought it to life, was just amazing. It almost like it could breathe and vibrate and do its magic. Where when I bought these store cables, I remember trying a Fender Hull power cable, connected it to it, flat, dead, muddy, simple, okay, but just kind of like this fatty gravy type of sound put on the sound. Then I tried a Cardes cable, better, without a doubt better, but still too dark, not really the proper response, kind of compensating type of warmth, but more sophisticated. Then I tried a lot of eBay power cables. I could just hear how muddy those cables were. Those were like power cables that cost me 20, 40, 50, 60 pounds back then. And yeah, just not really that good. So it just made me wonder, are all store-bought cables just really bad? And I have to admit that still to this day, a lot of store-bought power cables, I just think, kill the sound totally. But you can't hear it on a lot of gear, because a lot of gear is already so filtered. I remember trying all of these cables on my Macintosh amp, and I remember trying them all, and then just coming to that conclusion that, wow, these all sound almost the same. I could hear a difference because I had that special custom-made power cable on all of my stuff. So there was a slight difference, and because I had that custom cable and everything, it did, of course, sound better on the Macintosh. But it just made me wonder that maybe we're just totally over-filtering our gear so it can't react and do what it's supposed to do, because I was kind of baffled. I was kind of baffled by this, just by changing cables and plugs, how much it could really change the sound. So, and I feel that if I just had the Isolate Mini Sub-Axis power bar instead of the Shunyata Hydra 6, how much better it would have sounded. I would have liked to just mentally go back and then just hear that difference alone, and then hear the difference of having the gigawatt in-wall power cable, and then having that gigawatt power group, and then an isolated circuit breaker for that system alone, because that entire system here was shared with like 3 other rooms. So yeah, you could feel that, you could feel that there was like this electrical burp happening where it was kind of uneven and like going a bit in and out of phase, so I would have liked to have tried that. And what was it now? Yeah, it was just a totally different world, going from the Macintosh MA6900 over to this modified YBA amp. It was just, it made all music suddenly relevant going over to this YBA gear, where before it was kind of preferring a lot of stuff that was more safe, and I find that interesting. And especially I got into stuff, country music and stuff like that, Dolly Parton, Emmylou Harris, Linda Ronstadt, stuff like that. That just suddenly, that music, I didn't listen to music like that before, but suddenly listening to that music was just heavenly, It was just so intimate, and the guitars and the voices and the sincerity, you could just cry listening to this type of music. It was just ridiculous. And stuff like Joe Bonamassa, Budgie, Mariah Carey, Toni Braxton was also especially good on this setup. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the room together with the setup. I don't know. But and it was kind of here where I stopped listening to safe music, with my previous systems. My previous systems had been such a lower level that I was mostly listening to safe music like Katie Malua, Hugh Masekela, Dire Straits, Diana Krall, stuff like that, where there's sort of room for a lot of errors. And this was like my ticket to seeing the really good world, the Burmeister, the Griffin, the FM Acoustics, those types of brands, those exclusive brands that you almost never get to hear at your local store, because your local store, just usually has those local normal brands that get sold most places in the world, and this was just heaven for me. And I remember listening to this maybe about 10 months later, and then sadly just taking this sound for granted, assuming that's the standard and everybody else just has to live up to that. And I was getting a bit impatient, because I wanted to just experiment, doing all kinds of things. And what I wrote here was, see what happens when you get a better sound. Is that usually it only lasts for a while, then the brain kind of adapts and gets used to it. So sooner or later, especially if you're an extreme audiophile like me, you just need a higher high to get your dopamine fix, and listening to just normal gear frustrates you, like being a spoiled child. I remember having this thing and then just thinking, wow, this was good the first, I think, half year or so, and then just trying to push, push, trying to squeeze more different types of sound out of it. I was just in shock how much I could change the sound just by having the same 5 power cables and then just like changing the order. So the one with the 079 plugs, I changed that with another cable that was identical, but it had 029 plugs, which was like the total opposite, and then just switching that from like the CD to the amp or whatever, just watching that detail, that it was just so fascinating for me. That's when I felt like a bit like with the Macintosh. When I got that, it's like, wow, this is just top class. And then I got the YBA after that, and it was like, wow, this is like a whole new dimension of sound. But at that point, I remember dreaming about having it upgraded, the YBA amplifier with WBT silver terminals, because what we did was we gave it some CMC gold terminals, and without a doubt, it made it so much better than the original terminals. And I must have tried like literally hundreds of cable combinations, and never really being fully satisfied on what power combination was the best priority, because I could create so many different variations of that sound, and I probably had at that time, I'm guessing 5 or 8 different power cables. So there was always some that I didn't use in the system, and then I would just like rotate them, figuring out what is best, this or that. And man, what was that just fun, when you have really good gear and you do that and it's reactive, man, is that just fun. And sadly, one day while doing an experiment, I had the amplifier on standby. So what happens is that when you turn the volume down on this, it goes whoop to the left, and then this light goes out, but it's still, I think it's still got like a standby light on it here. And you could actually, while it was on standby, I could still put my ear to the speaker here, the 1CI speaker. I could still put my ear to it like a foot from it, and I could still hear a tiny bit of noise being sent to it. And I thought that in a way that was cool, and in a way that was also a tiny bit frustrating, because when you have like a really, big, heavy, expensive amplifier, let's just call it Macintosh or whatever, you usually don't have this problem where you can hear the noise in one channel or the other, because the sound is so ultra filtered that stuff doesn't get through. But on my YBA, it did. So it was kind of a flaw, which was still a good thing, because the sound was just so reactive. The signal path through this entire thing was just so direct and so short that stuff like that, small flaws like that still existed. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that I made a mistake, and that was turning this thing down, assuming that when it got into this standby state that it was off, because there wasn't any light on it here. But so what happened was that I was doing some kind of an experiment. I think I was trying to change to some other speaker cable or whatever, and I did this while it was on standby. Yeah, not a good idea. And you can actually get away with this typically, but the problem is that if you do this while it's on standby and you cross wires, so plus and minus hit each other. So I was, releasing a cable from the speaker. I let it fall down to the ground, not the ground, but the what was it called, the floor, and it hit the other one while there was still standby power going through this thing, and it just it took out the transformer in one of the sides, and when that happened, just that was hard. That was really hard going through that, because that took me I think it took me almost like 2 years to get that fixed, and the stages of getting that fixed, having the insurance company come in and evaluate, and writing to them, and I had to take it to like 3, 4, 5 people to finally get it fixed in the end. And when it was fixed in the end, it was still a good sound, and in a way it was better, because in order to fix it, we actually had to get the transformers from the bigger model, Integra 200. So we took those transformers and put them over to this thing, and in a way it was more powerful, but the problem with that was, I don't know what, it was the same quality transformers, but somehow when you go up in transformer size, apparently what happened, at least in my system, was the intimacy of the music. Having all of that extra wound up wire, it just removed that special, intimate sound where you could feel the artist kind of holding you in your hand, you know, and speaking to you in this like frail voice and getting really deep and intimate, and it just lost that. And then on top of that, because I was kind of greedy at that point, because I just thought, okay, while we're doing this, we might as well try and change the fuse on it. And man, was that just a bad decision. The fuse that came with this was not a good fuse like most other units on the market. But the thing you have to realize is that even though it isn't a very good fuse, it's still a relatively neutral fuse. So what I did was, I had the guy from the store, I'm not going to say what store it was, electrician store or whatever, repair store, and I told him to put in a AHP gold fuse instead of this normal crappy see-through 10-cent fuse, you know. And in a way, it gave me a lot more power, it gave me a lot more warmth, but the warmth went from like a, how do I describe this? From like a 7 to 6 or 7, something like that, to down to like a 4, you know. So I got all this added warmth to it, not real deep warmth, you know. So that was like, that was really frustrating. And then all of this upgrading, I don't know what happened, but somehow one of the guys that was looking at it had at some point removed the really good silver wire that was in it, you know, and just replaced it with some regular wire. And it was just, it still sounded good, but that deep intimate sound that was frail and a bit thin, where you could almost with your mind's eye view that opening of that window, a bit like with an electrostat, you know. That was gone. That was gone. There was just this added warmth, and then the depth was kind of not right there, but you mentally couldn't make up your mind what was happening, you know. So in a way, it was a tiny bit better, but overall, it was worse. So man, was that just heartbreaking, you know. And in the meantime, what had happened was, waiting 2 years for this, I got used to listening to my friend's setups, you know, and he was just listening to the most insane gear on the market, you know. I was starting to listen to stuff like I can't remember, all kinds of modified gear, some really good high-class gear, Negra gear, Spectral gear, Audio Note gear. Heard some Martin design speaker, which was like way better than this Fenderstein speaker. And it's just, you know, you have these expectations, and you know, me, I'm kind of a guy who romanticizes with you know, thoughts, old thoughts, and I had this like idea I would come back to the original sound and perhaps improve on that. And it was, you know, half as good when I got it back, and it was just heartbreaking. But again, on top of that problem, I got even more greedy, where in the meantime, while all of this was happening, I was having my YBA CD player, which was like one of the better CD players in the world. Most likely, I don't know, top 100 CD player in the world at that time. I got great. And I said to the guy who upgraded, I said, this is a fantastic CD player. What would happen if we put silver on it instead of copper wire, you know? And because then it matches what's inside of this, you know, and then on in theory this is good, but it just didn't turn out to be a good idea, you know. Stabilizing silver cable in a CD player is extremely difficult. So in a way, this thing got to sound like 15% better, but it kind of lost that distorted, more comfy, original type of sound, you know. It was a bit like when I had my Macintosh MA6900 amplifier. I had it modified. I in a way got better, but in another way it just steered away. It just went off track into another sound direction, you know. And I just couldn't really make these things talk exactly the same language so that I could go deep into the sound stage, you know. It was kind of going like in this direction, and then the other one was going in the other direction, and it was just you know, when you use so much money and time and everything and planning, and yeah, that was really difficult for me. That was the tough time for me, having to deal with that, and then on top of that, having to work insane hours at work, going from one job to another. That was tough, but still, even though all of this happened, it's just nice to reflect on that happening. And having a small room like that really just makes a huge difference to the sound compared to what I have now. You know, this is only like a third. This room is only like a third of what I have now. You know, and I mean, it's almost a holy thing that you mustn't mess with in sound. Having this kind of room where this part here and this part here and this part here just is undisturbed. So there's sort of an evenness, a thing supporting the system. Because once you have these openings, you know, the window opening here and the opening to another room here, it makes it very frustrating to listen to music, because certain parts of the frequency just get a lot more attention than others. So in a way, this room was really terrifically good, and in a way it was also very flawed. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to show you guys this. So don't take a sound for granted, you know. And when stuff like this happens, just don't give up. But you know, I just remember that time having that gear, you know, the volume control, the way that it would click, turning on for the first time, and you could just have it on for. I remember having the CD player on for weeks and weeks at a time, and the amplifier weeks and weeks at a time, and it was just so heartbreakingly good, the sound, you know. It's just so difficult to go into a store, try a regular piece of gear, even some more expensive gear, and then get that sound where it feels as if the artist is really standing there in front of you, singing your song to you. And you just, you know, I remember listening to this the first couple of months when I got it from my friend, and it was such a shockingly good sound. I was literally for I think days and weeks just crying, listening to music. It was that beautiful, and I really wish that I could have somehow kept that sound and, you know, almost preserve that in a way, and and made all of the people in the world just get to hear that once, you know. That was a rare experience, very rare experience. And I also got to invite a friend over. He also listened to it and was very impressed. He said it was a bit on the thin side, and I agree with him, you know. But, you know, you just needed to make some small changes, you know, those plugs, that power bar, perhaps fixing that sidewall, so, you know, the lack of door here, or wall, you know, made it a bit worse than it should have been. And I could have had some drapes here, you know, to kind of have controlled the sound better. But do I just miss that sound. And you can't really see it on these pictures here. It's a bit two-dimensional, but it's actually very pretty to look at and to touch. But, you know, a regular guy looking at an amplifier like this, putting it in a normal 25 to 45 square meter room, putting it on a normal speaker, will never ever get to hear anything close to what I heard. It's the fact, it's the combination of stuff that I did, the amount of time, research I did, and just, you know, going to the insane level of getting everything with the same cables, the exact same cables. I even had the guy who made the cables make his own custom plugs, spade plugs, that was made of the same metal, you know, to get that same sound. And in a way, those cables were really, really, really good in a way. But I also noticed that there is a reason why we buy these super expensive spades, you know, because in the end they do deliver a lot more finesse and pizzazz and sexiness. They have a way of selling the sound more, so it's a bit more edgy, it's a bit more intriguing and appealing, where this other sound that he made was more of a traditional, homey, more limited type of sound, but good in just in a very different way. And just I just miss this equipment, you know. I wish that a lot of people could just have heard what I heard here. And because once you hear this type of sound that exists, hi-fi just doesn't become the same again, you know. It just, you get to fully understand where you've been, how crappy the sound was, even though it had, you know, the Macintosh stuff that I had, it was like 2 or 3 times more powerful, but still, on an emotional scale, it just wasn't connecting, you know. And I've heard that on a lot of pieces of Macintosh gear, Past Lives, Mark Levinson, and stuff like that. It's almost impossible on gear like that to get into that type of sound where you're just going through your random library of music and you're just crying constantly. You're just like, I can't believe it's so beautiful. Even stuff like rock music, and I wouldn't say metal, but all kinds of weird types of music, listening to Joan Baez, Linda Ronstadt and stuff like that. If I listen to those types of music, John Denver, Joan Baez, Linda Ronstadt, Emmylou Harris, Dolly Parton, I wouldn't want to listen to that more than a couple of minutes, and then I would already lose my interest, just thinking that, this is sissy girly music that's awkward. Just go on to the next thing. Oh yeah, try some Metallica, try some Dire Straits, try some Katie Melua, you know. It's just, you know, you have different types of gear for different personalities, and I just felt that there was this giant void with these pieces of gear that I had, also with the Musical Fidelity and Vincent gear that I owned. Every time I wanted to play that really awkward, weird folk, country, perhaps pop-ish music that was from those days on those slightly raw, not so well recorded CDs, it just would completely not hit that type of sound. It's almost as if a lot of these pieces of gear that we buy are almost all tuned into this sort of mainstream sound. So you have to listen to something that's in the top 100 of this time, 2020, 2010, 2000, 1919, or whatever. It just can't really tune into those types of feelings and that way of the instrument vibrating in that way. Everything just kind of feels as if it's broken down and processed in ones and zeros, and you're just getting this computer sound, doing its thing, doing the structure really well, doing the bass really well, doing the treble and mid-range, separating everything, but it's just not coming together, and ripping your heart out. And I just feel that this was the first time where I got to hear a sound that basically was like sniffing to Negra or Spectral, or perhaps a bit of audio note sound. And that's probably my advice to a lot of people that just try a lot of these esoteric brands, even though they're extremely expensive. Try a Lawrence audio speaker, try Verity Martin design speaker, Karma audio speaker. Try all of these things, all of these regular things that are put in front of us. I feel that a lot of those, safe players that have these, pretty decent prices where you get a lot of value, I feel that a lot of those things just are built for this type of safe sound, that we get to hear on the radio mostly, But if you really want to listen to some good music, listen to something like, for example, progressive rock, where you have bands like Budgie and Grimson Rock, or whatever they're called, Genesis, and the good old Genesis on records. I mean, just Genesis on records, selling England by the pound, fed to this thing's, I don't know, $10 RIA or whatever that's in it, just sounded so amazingly good, and there's the RIA is basically the size of my finger, what's in this thing, but it's just the fact that the signal was so integrated, so short, that everything you did around the equipment just reacted in a very special way. So yeah, long video, but just a really good experience trying this for the first time, and realizing that this was basically where I heard music for the first time, but before this, with all the other gear that I had, and I had owned a lot of gear up till that point. I probably had owned at least 20 systems up to that point, and I had heard at least like 150 systems, did different systems at that time, and that was just like an eye-opening experience. I tried a lot of stuff in the stores. I think at that point I tried 5 different stores maybe, and I just tried everything, demoed everything that they had, even the higher Macintosh MA 7000 model. And yeah, it was more powerful, more control, more black level, but it was almost worse with its way of relaying emotions. It was just not emotionally involving. You had everything else basically, but that naturalness of the instrument, that energy, that drive, that true grunt, and where you got to see a real 3D image, where you also got to hear the frail side of the artist. I feel that with a lot of gear, we get to hear this sort of side that they want you to hear, you know, that they're macho and then they're cool and, you know, everything's perfectly timed and everything like that. But this is me getting to hear the sound behind that, you know, the stuff that they almost don't want you to hear, you know. And I think that this all came together in sort of a freak accident, you know. I think I was just lucky getting into this type of sound, and yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys, into my first really good intimate transistor sound that I had. And actually the last that's the second last transistor system I had. After that I think I went over to tube sound. But man, good times. And yeah, that's me logging off. Like and subscribe if you can. Bye.